Now then, let's talk about HS2, because the latest legal attempt to stop the government's High Speed 2 rail project has been rejected by the Court of Appeal. 15 councils and some residents' associations have failed in their attempt to lodge objections to the scheme. The campaigners have been told they can have one final try with a hearing at the Supreme Court. The project, which is expected to cost nearly £43 billion, would allow trains to run at 250 miles per hour from London to Birmingham from 2026. So it's some time off yet, with branches to Manchester and Leeds by 2032. The Lib Dem MP Norman Baker is the rail minister. Good afternoon to you.
Hello.
And Thomas Crane is with us as well, of HS2 Action Alliance, the lawyer and director of HS2 Alliance, which brought the challenge. Good afternoon.
Hi there.
Norman Baker, the Transport Minister Simon Byrne says by taking this to court, opponents of it are wasting taxpayers' money. Do you agree with that?
Well, they're legally entitled to take action, and they've done so. That's part of a democratic society. But ultimately, of course, it does cost taxpayers money to have these challenges in the courts. And the result of today's action, where the government's won on all fronts, suggests that we've got a pretty good case. Will
you take this to the Supreme Court, Thomas Crane?
Yes, we will. It's kind of ironic to hear a minister talk about money when he's talking about spending £43 billion on a single rail project. The case that we brought has been funded by ordinary people up and down the country, not by taxpayers, who are angry and upset at what this government's doing and refusing to listen about the environmental damage that HS2 will cause.
Norman Baker, do you accept the degree of environmental damage that opponents say will be caused by this?
No, I don't, for two reasons. The first is that there's been enormous steps taken to minimise the environmental damage, and one of the reasons why the costs have increased. By the way, that $43 billion includes a huge cushion, which the Treasury's required. But the reason it's increased is to deal with the environmental impact. That's why we got more tunnels and so on, which does, of course, push the cost up. But the second reason is because I lived through HS1, being a South East MP, and I remember the huge cries of how this is going to destroy the Kent countryside, how it's going to the end of everything in Kent. Actually, it's blended in very well, and Kent's benefited economically as a consequence.
Thomas, respond to that.
It's just tragic to hear a minister say things like that, which he knows are not true. HS2's route goes through unspoilt countryside. It's nothing like HS1 in Kent, which goes by a motorway. It destroys 130 protected wildlife sites of special scientific interest, over 70 ancient woodlands, the land take of a 4-lane motorway. To hear the minister talk about and try and minimise the environmental devastation this line will cause is really depressing. And I think the government, if they want to proceed with this line, it's got to be honest with the people about the environmental destruction it's going to cause.
Do you think it's just not possible to minimise it, Thomas Crane?
You just don't need to build it. That's the problem with it. And it's a fantasy project dreamt up by ministers who aren't quite clear what they should be doing with the railways.
And is one of your arguments that a variety of transport projects adding up to this cost or thereabouts would be a more sensible approach?
Well, exactly. I mean, there is a huge opportunity cost with HS2, essentially costing around £250 million a mile. Just 1 mile of track spend could basically give Wolverhampton and Coventry a bicycle network the same as you get in the Netherlands. Those are the kind of choices that people are asking government to make, rather than essentially building a line that gets you to Birmingham 20 minutes quicker.
Let me just get a final thought on this from Norman Baker then.
First reason we're building HS2, the main reason is not about speed, it's about capacity. With the West Coast mainland's already getting filled up after £9 billion spent by the last government. We need more capacity north-south. We've also got the biggest rail investment programme since Victoria. Can I just finish a sentence? We've also got the biggest rail investment programme going on since Victorian times, leaving aside HS2, and we've got record amounts of money going to cycling as well. We're pulling all levers as far as they can go.
That's just not true, and you know that's not true.
Yeah,
the West Coast mainline is only 52% full. Your own figures show it. There's absolutely no capacity reason to build this thing. This thing is a political vanity project, and what we're looking for is some courage from somebody in power to say stop. Let's spend this on some appropriate projects.
Thomas Crane, thank you. Thomas Crane is the lawyer and director of the HS2 Alliance, which brought that challenge and say they will take it to the Supreme Court. And thanks as well to the Lib Dem MP Norman Baker, who's the rail minister.